Hi everyone, I'm the Plant Propagator and welcome to my channel. So today I have a video that I want to share with you that kind of highlights some of my failures. But these are things that I think are everyone's failures, so I'm happy to share them with you. What I want to talk with you about today is how people kill their orchids. And if you know growers and they claim that they're great growers and they have not killed any of their orchids, well, they're lying to you. Everyone kills their orchids for one reason or another. Growing orchids, unless they only have one or something like that. But growing orchids is it's pretty complicated, and the number of ways that you can kill an orchid are really great. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Part of it is that people don't know what to look for in their orchids. They may not know how to grow their orchids. When I first started out on my orchid journey quite a few years ago, I killed a lot, and I actually keep records of the orchids that I have and that I've kept, and also how long I've had them before they die on me. So I've got a lot of information. I don't always keep good records of how they die because, like I said, it gets complicated. Okay, but as far as how everyone kills their orchids, do I have any data on this? Are there any notes? Are there any surveys that I've done? And the answer is no. So maybe this should be how I've killed most of my orchids, but I think I know how other people, because I started out as a novice, gained a little more experience, don't lose as many as I used to, but I still lose orchids. And these are some that I am going to lose, some that I almost lost and are coming back, and some that I'm going to try to save. So there's lots of different ways that people lose their orchids, and there's a few different levels of this also. So what I want to talk about first is how people damage their orchids, what the orchids go through that doesn't necessarily kill them, but they kind of struggle through them and possibly recover, or people learn and they grow their orchids a little bit differently or something along those lines. Okay, so most of the orchids that are on this table, most of the orchids that you have, I think, are probably, they're tropical. So they should be inside, or they should be outside under shade, under very controlled conditions. So orchids like shade and warmer temperatures. So you can kill an orchid if it's too cold, certainly, or if it's too hot. Very easy ways to kill cold or freezing. Some orchids in reality can handle this, but the majority of orchids that you deal with don't like it really, they don't like it cold. They don't like it, they can't handle it when it gets to freezing. Orchids do like it. Most of the orchids, at least that I grow, do like it hot. So it'll get up in 95, 100 degrees, and they're okay with that. So the orchids can grow with high temperature and high humidity, temperatures that would make you or me melt almost. The orchids tend to do well. And again, all of my orchids are growing outside here in Southwest Florida, and it gets really warm and humid in the summertime, which is a time of the year that they thrive. Okay, so how else can orchids be damaged? So as far as pathogens and pests go, you can get virus infections on your orchids, and the way that these typically work is that the viruses often won't kill your plant, but they'll damage them. And then for my plants, if they're virus infected and I test them and I know they're infected, I just toss them, I throw them out, because you can't cure an orchid plant of a virus. Orchids can also get insects, and many times the insects won't kill the plant. Sometimes they do. For severe infestations, they'll kill the plant, but in many cases they'll just really hammer it and damage it. And then you can spray for the insect, you can remove the insects, spray for the insect, and in many cases the orchids will recover. So those are some of the ways that you can have a damaged plant. You can also over fertilize your orchids, and so you can, and that will burn them. And what you can also do is if sometimes there's too much salt, you can get salt buildup. If you're growing orchids inside and you keep on adding fertilizer and you don't flush the salts out of the pots, it just accumulates and you get too much salts and you'll kill them that way very, very slowly. You can also kill orchids, or damage orchids, I should say, from sunburn. So you can get a lot of burning damage on the leaves. It looks bad, and a lot of people can't tell the difference between a lot of fungal pests because you get burning on the leaves. They can't tell the difference between that. But the sun, if you get too many hours, in many cases, in many orchids, too many hours of direct sun, because again they like shade, too many hours of the sun will cause the leaves to burn and you'll get damage. The final way that you can do this is that if you have too little water and the leaves shrivel, the pseudobulbs shrivel, and you can damage them a little bit from too little water. That's a little bit more unusual, is to underwater, but I have colleagues that tell me about people that grow plants in other places where inside the house where they're just ignored and where they're not watered at all. And it's difficult to kill an orchid with too little water, but it's a plant. If you don't water it at all, it'll die. But a lot of times it's just damage. Okay, so why are these things so challenging to grow? And again, what we'll get to is how you lose it. So again, what we're going to go over is mostly how I've lost most of my orchids, but we'll get to that in a second, okay? Orchids are very slow growing plants, and because of that, they are slow to respond. With many other houseplants, many other plants that you have, for example, if they need water, they'll tell you, they'll wilt. They'll tell you, and I used to come home from trips and see my indoor plants in my house in the Midwest, and they were wilting and they were screaming, I need water. And in that case, I watered. I mean, it was so obvious because they wilt. These guys don't wilt the same way. If the leaves get scorched, if you have browning on the leaves, sunburn is pretty quick. It's like 1 or 2 days you can see when you're getting too much sun on your orchid leaves, and the leaves, you'll get these splotches on the leaves, and they'll tell you fast if they're getting burned. But for the most part, it's difficult to tell what's going on because orchids grow so slowly. Again, the houseplants scream, water me, do this or that. Orchids kind of, they whisper. And I think not only do they whisper in a foreign language, in a language that many people don't understand. So it's hard really to gauge what these plants need. Okay, so let's get back to this. How do people kill most of their orchids? And again, it's probably how I have killed most of my orchids. Okay, so what happens with most of my orchids is they're killed by too much care, too much attention, which is kind of the same as too much water. And that's a real common thing to do, and it's difficult to see this in orchids, because what happens with too much water is typically they rot. The roots rot on these orchids, or the pseudobulbs rot, or the plant parts rot because there's too much water. So there are pathogens around. There are pathogens everywhere. They're in the air, they're in the pots, they're in the new orchids that you bring home from a grower or that you get in the mail. There are pathogens everywhere. And what happens is if you get too much water and too much moisture, these pathogens will grow, they'll spread, they'll get into your plant, and then you'll lose your plant. So it's kind of like too much water, too much love, but it's also complicated because you have pathogens around, and they're both fungal and bacterial pathogens that will get in there and do a lot of damage. All right, so what happens? Why do you see on this? Well, a lot of times, again, you see the pseudobulbs will shrivel up when the pathogens get in there and they damage and kill the roots. Now, the thing is, they kill the roots, the plant can't take up any more water, so then these plants look like they're shriveling. And it's like, okay, what do we as plant lovers do when we see plants that look like they're shriveling up? Well, you water them, but that's the opposite of what you should be doing, because too much water made the roots rot, which then led to the plant parts, the pseudobulbs and the leaves shriveling up. So you have to understand what's going on. And when this type of things happen, you have to look closely at the plant. You can remove some of the media and look at the roots and see if they're mushy. And then you can, in some cases, you can get these guys to recover. So the pseudobulbs and the leaves and everything, they can turn, brown, they can turn black, and they can get mushy, and then you have a situation. What I do typically, so here are 3 seedlings, and the seedlings are incredibly susceptible to overwatering and to fungal pathogens. And what happens on this, and I'll get a close-up of these, but what happens is you've got brown or black spots on whole sectors or segments on the leaves. And what you have to do in this situation, and this is a fungus that got into this plant, what you have to do here is flame an instrument and cut directly below where that damaged area is. So, this video shows where the brown spots areas are on these leaves. And then if you cut these off with a flamed, hot, sterile instrument, wait for it to cool down a little bit. If you cut that off, you just remove it. And a lot of times those seedlings will recover. But not always. And so what happens, you got to be careful if that pathogen, if that fungus or bacteria spreads down through the leaves into the plant, then you're in trouble. And the thing is, with these seedlings, when you have these plants, there's going to be variability. I have some plants that I just can't grow here, that for some reason in this area, I've tried growing the plant, I lost it, likely from a fungal infection. I bought another one from a different vendor, and the same thing happened. Occasionally, I'm successful the second time, but a lot of times the genetics of the plant indicate that this isn't going to do well. So if you buy a plant and it fails for you regardless of what you do, sometimes buy another plant, get something different. Try some different things, and maybe the other plant will be what will do better. I have the luxury with my seedlings of being able to select for those plants that do well. It's the survival of the fittest, the ones that are more resistant to the pathogens that are in my home growing space. And so they kind of self-select, and this is how they grow. I do have plants also that the pathogens get in there, the fungi get in there, and I then have to cut off not just the leaves, but there are certain parts of a plant that are infected. So I have to clean out the plant and separate it and cut off the base of the plant that it's infected. Oftentimes, as I have right here, oftentimes leaving very little, as is the case here. So this is a plant that I got from my daughter, the Plant Propagator Junior, and when I took this apart and tried to clean off all of the infected tissue, there wasn't much left. And so we'll see how how these plants survive. This is another division of a plant that I pulled off, and I cut off everything that looked, and when you cut and there's black, you have to keep on cutting till it's green. Flame in between, but you have to keep on cutting till it's green. So this is an area from this plant where there was a black, so the black rot was in the plant, and I had to keep on cutting. So there was just this small piece of this plant was left. But now what's happening is I'm getting a new pseudobulb, new growth, and new roots coming out from this plant. This is a plant right here that I can't do that with. So this plant right here, and this is a real disappointment because this is a Cattleya maxima, and I was really excited to get this plant. But apparently the grower of this plant must have sprayed the crap out of it when they had it. It looked great when I bought it. I don't spray my plants quite as much, apparently, as these guys do. But I brought this thing back, and what one of the indications are, see, when you've got a pseudobulb here that was like here, and the black rot that's at the base of the pseudobulb, I mean, it's just rotten. The base of the pseudobulb can't support it. And then you look at this pseudobulb right here, and it's black. I scraped away the sheath, the covering, and the base of this pseudobulb is black. So there was something that was in the base parts of this plant. This plant has been slowly dying. You know, the leaves are yellow. The base of the leaves are yellow. There may be, yes, I don't even think so. There may be a nice pseudobulb here, but I'm looking at the base of the pseudobulb, and I can see there's black down there. So this is not going to make it. I got it in a real airy mix. It doesn't matter. I transplanted it right after I got it back right after I bought it. It's in a good mix. It's next to my other orchids. It's doing well. The other thing is this was located on my fence behind me. And what happens, because I'm limited on space, is this plant, if it was in the top layer of plants, and it's got black rot, it's got a pathogen on it, and through the rain or through watering, and then it drips on the plant below it, then you're spreading things around. It's a real problem for seedlings when you got these things packed in so close to each other that the pathogens that are there can spread really, really easily. So you've got to be careful with that. So again, it's a combination of moisture and black rot, and a combination of things that make me lose my plants. With most people, I think it's just overwatering is really the thing that then and secondarily gives rise to other kind of pathogens that will get in there and kill their plants. The final thing that I want to show you, just so I can end on a high note, on a good note here, because now these are recovering. These hopefully will recover. This is gone. I want to show you these two plants right here. And these are two seedlings. Jeez, this pot is going to crack. These are two seedlings that are from the same cross. All right, so this happens to be, both of these are Lorian. And this is from a self of Lorian Paradise that I made a number of years ago. This was a plant, this was the first plant that bloomed for me on this, from this bunch of seeds. This is a plant that I've had for the longest time, and it just hasn't done well. And I'm taking this as an opportunity to dump this plant, to get rid of it. What you can do, if you have a lot of plants, and again, in some cases with my seedlings I do, you just have to get rid of these plants that aren't performing well, that if there is a pathogen in there, you know, get it away from all of your other plants. Once it starts looking bad, quarantine it, isolate it, do what you need to do. This is a nice plant. Small blooms, fragrant, growing really well. This one is not. So again, this came from the seed capsule, and the same seed capsule. So there's genetic variability between even siblings shown here, but there's also variability in the different types of genetic variability in the different types of orchids that you grow. So try a few different orchids, see what you like, Be careful not to overwater, which is again the main thing that kills orchids. But also watch your plant and listen carefully in another language to what they have to say. Watch very closely for overwatering and for pathogens that are invading your plant, and you'll be fine. You're going to keep on losing orchids. I'm doing that. Everyone does that. Luckily, they can be replaced, most of them. I have some that are one of a kind. This is a one of a kind. This is not. This is a clone. But you know, just be careful. Listen to what your orchids are telling you. Learn their language. Learn what's going on, and you'll fare better, and you'll at least lose less of your orchids as you gain that experience. All right. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did and you want to keep on seeing them, it would help me out if you can click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. All right, that's all I have. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and happy propagating.